Welcome to the webinar this morning, everyone. We are so glad to have you. My name is Jeremy Glauser, and I am the founder and CEO at eLuma Online Therapy. It is my honor to welcome you today to an amazing opportunity. This webinar is called Embracing Change Management in Uncertain Times. And 2020 is starting to wind down. There seems to be a legacy of uncertainty, and change will continue into what we see as the foreseeable future. And more than ever, educators need to be equipped with the right framework to deal with these new challenges and circumstances. I think all of us can feel that. You'll join us today by hearing from Mindy Hintzy, who is a ProSci-certified change management practitioner and has been doing this for various organizations the past 20 years. And I have personal experience. She is amazing. Mindy's going to break down change management into effective, actionable tasks to help you manage change in these new and uncertain times. And we'll talk about effective change management, taking a solid communication plan, learning opportunities, and of course, reinforcement. I want to tell you a little bit about Mindy before I hand the microphone over to her. Mindy and I have known each other for just under a year, but it has been such a privilege. She is eLuma's Vice President of Customer Experience here at eLuma, and she is a very accomplished educator. I think that's an understatement. She has worked with students in all aspects, as a French teacher, English teacher, working as a mental health provider for a time, and she has been in education technology for a number of years, strategizing around services and delivering high quality education to kids. Her educational profession started in the classroom as a teacher in special education, and she has a passion for social emotional learning and helping students develop empathy and self-awareness. She has a master's in counseling psychology, so she could work in and promote mental health. And that has served her well here at eLuma. Seeing an opportunity to create an even greater impact, she transitioned to the ed tech space, where she has worked with countless schools to improve student success and inspire change. As a part of this, she has helped thousands of teachers successfully develop their online teaching skills. And as a ProSci certified change management practitioner, she has just the experience we need to help us through these uncertain times and learn some critical skills as educators. So Mindy, thank you so much for joining us and being willing to teach us about these things. And we look forward to learning from you today.
Well, thank you, Jeremy. Thank you so much for such a great introduction. It really is my honor to work with eLuma. For those of you who don't know me, I've been with eLuma for about 7 years, oh my gosh, 7 months. I started right before COVID hit. So talk about managing change during uncertain times, right? That's what we're going to talk about today. So let's just get started. We're going to really dig into change management and what it's all about and how you can apply it in your realm. I am ProSci certified. If you aren't familiar with ProSci, they are one of the leaders in change management methodology. They've done over 20 years of experience around change management. There are over 75,000 practitioners around the world, and 80% of Fortune 100 companies use the ProSci methodology. Now, I'm going to tell you there's lots of change management methodologies out there. There's lots of change management theories. There's lots of change cycles out there. All of them have great information and great stuff. ProSci is just another one in the bunch. The reason I started using the ProSci methodology is because it was a company decision that we went with that one, and I have learned to love the simplicity of it. I love how actionable it is. So whether you jump in with both feet and fully embrace the ProSci methodology, or you just take a couple of tips and tricks from this presentation today, in either situation, you're going to have really good information, research backed, evidence-based practices at your fingertips. So I am going to go ahead and promote their website. A lot of the information I'm going to share with you, you will be able to find for free, available on ProSci.com. If you have any questions, I'm available at the end of this presentation to answer questions and things like that. Okay, so I want you to think about, in your own personal life, think about the last 12 months. And in all of these areas that I'm showing on the screen right now, where have you experienced change? Now, location up at the top of this image, I think that's a really important one that we need to consider, because some of you might have been working in a brick and mortar building somewhere and now you've been remote for a while, or maybe you're going back and forth, or maybe you've been fully online with limited access to a small team and now you have access to a big team. Maybe some processes have changed for you. Maybe systems that you're using have changed. I know for many people, they've experienced a change in compensation, meaning they might have lost their jobs and not been able to, take home the money that they were used to having to provide for their families. So lots of things can influence where change happens or how change is received. And a lot of these on this slide are simply work related. So how many of you have also experienced change in your personal life? So change is constantly happening and we have to address it. So today we're going to talk about why change management. Why should you even worry about it, especially during such uncertain times? Why should we plan for anything? Because it's all going to change in 3 months anyway. We're going to talk a little bit about the ProSci ADKAR model. We're going to talk about organizational change. I'm going to tell you about the change management plans that you need to have and develop in order to do good change management. And then we'll have some time for question and answer. So first of all, why change management? Well, again, thinking about all the change you've been through in the last 12 months. And then if I were to ask you about all the change that you've gone through in the last 5 years, there's probably been quite a bit. Well, when it comes to businesses and organizations and educational systems, one of the major reasons we need to do good change management is because if we don't, that's the same as bad change management. And the more you do bad change management, the more change fatigue your constituents have, the more change fatigue the people around you have, the less likely you are to meet your project objectives. It ends up costing you a lot more money in the long run. So in order to thrive in today's ever-changing times, you have to do good change management. You have to be intentional about change management, or it's the same as intentionally doing bad change management. So like I said, you'll increase the likelihood of your project success. ProSci has collected over 2,000 data points, and they have found that that organizations that at least apply a little bit of change management and those that do excellent change management are up to 6 times more likely to meet their project objectives than those who don't. You also want to consider that with good change management, you just deliver on the people-dependent portion of the project ROI. Now, what that means is that anytime we're changing and we need people to do things differently, as they're learning that new thing or what we want them to do differently, there's a decrease in productivity. And so doing good change management helps them get back up to awesome productivity much more quickly. Also, doing good change management takes the chance out of change. It puts you as the driver of the change in control. We don't leave a lot to mystery. We make sure that we address resistance and understand why people aren't changing the way we need them to. And ultimately, this is just good practice for being a good leader. This is a way to treat your employees right. They're going to ask for communication. They're going to ask for assistance during any type of change, and change management helps you address everything that your employees need. So keep in mind that even though we're talking a little bit about organizational change, change happens at the individual level. It's a personal thing. And in order to have long-lasting organizational change, we have to address the personal, individual, and unique reasons that people are resistant to change. Now, ProSci has a model called ADKAR. And ADKAR, as you can see from this image, is the starting letter of 5 different words that drive people through the change process. Now, everyone has to go through this change process on their own. They have to be aware of the need for change. They have to have a desire to support the change. They need to have knowledge of how to change. They need to have the ability to demonstrate the skills and the behaviors that are needed for the future state. And they need reinforcement to make the change stick. Now, I could probably tell you 100 stories of my own personal change process trying to lose weight. I don't know about you guys, but I've lost and gained the same 25 pounds, I don't know how many times in my life. I am aware I need to lose the weight. I know what my blood levels, I know what my blood tests tell me. I know I need to lose weight. I'm absolutely aware of it. Do I want to change? Absolutely. I would like to lose some weight because I like good clothes and I want to wear some cute pants. And then I need to have the knowledge of how to change. Well, I'm telling you, in my adult life, since I've gained and lost this weight so many times, I absolutely know how to lose it. I just need the time to demonstrate the skills and engage in the behaviors. And then I need the reinforcement to make the change stick. Now I did some soul searching as I was preparing this presentation. And I really think the problem is I've been using the wrong type of reinforcement. Because as I try to lose weight, you know how I reinforce my successes? I eat. I reward myself with food. How ridiculous is that? I lose some weight, and so I reward myself with cake. I'm going to have to change my reward system to make this change stick. So I'm putting it out there for the world to know. I am holding myself accountable. It's time to lose some weight again. But this is the process that every person needs to go through, whether it's a personal change that they're trying to accomplish, or if it's an organizational change that you as a leader are trying to move your organization. So how this all fits together is like this. During the current state, that's the way you do things now. You're going to make sure that you're building awareness for the need for change. Why do we need to change? What's going to be better? And help drive that desire so that people get on board and they want to change. Then during the transition state, that's when you build up their knowledge and ability. You provide those learning opportunities so that they can be successful in the future state. Once we're in the future state, we reinforce it. And then because things happen so quickly, we start the process all over again. Now, the reason it's so important that you address the individuals, because if I look at an organization, the current state is made up of a bunch of individuals doing things the way they do them now. During the transition state, I need to make sure that everybody gets the training that they need, everyone understands the goals of the project or of the change, and then we have a nice, successful future state. But if I don't do good change management, this is kind of what the organizational change looks like. And if I only have 50% of my people active in the future state, behaving the way I want them to do, behaving the way I want them to behave, doing the things I want them to do, then I'm not very successful. And my future state is going to fall apart. People revert back to the old ways. And then now I am experiencing change fatigue because I have to try again. So I've given you this big picture of just an overview of change management, why it's so hard. So now let's get down to the tactical stuff. How do you apply this to to any change initiative that you have? Well, it starts with a communication plan. Now, your communication plan allows you to articulate your key messages that need to go out to everybody in the organization, everybody that's going to be impacted by the change. It also accounts for who's going to deliver the message, because when it comes to communication, the sender matters, right? People want to know as soon as there's any change going to be happening, or they start to get rumors that things in the current state aren't working the way they are, they want to know what's changing. What's changing? Why are we changing? Yeah. So why are we changing? And why are we changing now? And then they want to know what's the risk of not changing? And then the final one, this is where the sender really matters, is what's in it for me, or how do you want me to do my job differently because of this change? Now, the first 4 questions, what's changing, why are we changing now, and what's the risk of not changing? That needs to come from, for lack of a better explanation, the executive sponsor, the person highest up on the food chain in the organization, to say, this is the big picture and why we're doing this and why we're doing it now. But when it comes down to how do you want me to do my job differently, or what's in this for me, the direct supervisor needs to be involved. That's who needs to send that message. If we're talking about a technology change, maybe you're launching a new software system that everyone is going to need to use. I know as more schools have gone online, they've adopted learning management systems. So trying to get all teachers to use the learning management system is really hard. But the person who should not send the message about what teachers need to do is the IT director, because that person is not closely related enough. Maybe in the small system it is, but that person is not closely related enough to the teachers who are in the classroom or the related service providers who are providing the therapy. That person's not close enough to have a big impact when they're sending that message. So it needs to come from the message needs to come from the right person. Second, you need to make sure that communication is consistent and ongoing. So this is not a one and done, because key messages need to be heard 5 to 7 times before they are internalized and someone can remember them. So you have to communicate a lot. In fact, over communicate. When you think that you're going to drive people crazy because you've sent so many email about this thing, send it again. Over communicate. Make sure your message is targeted though. So using this example of shifting to a learning management system, there's going to be different messages that need to go to the IT team or the technical team that need to go to the teachers. And there's different messages that need to go to parents, and there's different messages that need to go to students. I wouldn't send a message that's intended for students to my IT department or to the HR department at the school district. So key messages need to be heard 5 to 7 times. Make sure they're targeted. And then finally, don't think that email and in-person meetings or face-to-face meetings, because they might not be in person right now. Let's be honest, it's COVID times. You might be doing this over Zoom just like we are right now. But those aren't the only ways to communicate. Think about newsletters. Think about, if you are in a situation where you are face-to-face but social distancing, think about posters, think about table tents, think about videos that can go out. So don't rely just on email and meetings. Think about all of the other ways you can communicate the why now, what's changing, what's in it for me. There's lots of ways you can do that. Okay, the second plan that you need is the sponsor roadmap. Now, this is telling the executive sponsor or the person who is saying, this is the change we need to do, knows what you need from her or from him. This is you saying, hey, sponsor, I need you to show up or record a video that I can play at this meeting so everybody hears from you that this is what we're really doing. I've worked with school systems and organizations where I've had people tell me directly, if I don't hear it right from the superintendent or if I don't hear it right from the CEO, I don't believe that this is an initiative that's really that important. So think about, what do you need your sponsor, your person who has the authority and the credibility and the reputation to help drive this? What do you need from that person? And put it in a plan and ask them to do it. Now, in larger organizations, you might have to spoon feed, for lack of a better term, spoon feed that person. You might need to, help them write the email and then give it to them so that they can send it out. In smaller organizations, you're probably managing the change and driving the change yourself. So you get to be the master of the messages. Okay, next you need a training plan. There's always going to be a discrepancy between how we do things today and how we want things to be done in the future. And this might mean people need to learn new software. They need to learn new processes. They need to learn new procedures. Well, you have to give them an opportunity to actually learn those things. So what is your training plan going to look like? Again, from research, we know that boot camp style one and done training is the least effective as possible. That has the least amount of change, especially on teacher behavior, than any other type of training. So in such a crazy time when people, where work life and home life is getting, there's not so much of a hard line between it. Things are blurred a little bit more. Think about on-demand training. Are there print resources that you can share with someone? Are there video tutorials you can create so that someone can watch them at their own pace? In the school setting, we talk a lot about flipping our classroom or blended learning. Think about the same types of good teaching and instructional practice for your own training plan. Finally, or not finally, next we've got the coaching plan. Now remember, I told you that we need the sponsor or the highest person on the food chain to give certain messages, and we need the direct supervisors, the people who lead people, to give other messages. That's where your coaching plan comes into place. You really need to work with those middle managers or the people leading the people to help them understand the key messages so that there's consistency in communication across the organization and that the change efforts stay on target and in alignment. So that's really, really important. Okay, finally, resistance management. Now, I bet if I were to ask any of you in the room, if I were to tell you your organization is going to start using a new software starting next week, can you picture someone in your head who's going to grumble a little bit about that? Yeah, there are people who are just resistant to change, and we need to understand why they're resistant to it. So this comes to your resistance management plan. Think about all the reasons that somebody might not want to change. Most often, it's because of fear. Fear of losing their status as the expert in something that they've already known. Fear of losing their status as someone who helped implement the old way of doing things. Or if it was someone's idea to use a software that you're now abandoning. All of those things are going to interfere with their desire to get on board and make the change. So some other things to keep in mind is sometimes somebody's resistant because they can't handle one more change right now. Maybe there's things going on in their personal life, and asking them to learn a new software right now just is not going to happen. So think about why might they be resisting, and we're going to use ADKAR as a way to diagnose some resistance issues as well. I'm going to talk about that in a minute. Okay, so now you know about why change management. Now you know that there are 5 plans that you can do. And if this seems overwhelming, if you have to pick one of these plans to just execute with perfection or as close to as you can get, start with the communication plan. That is absolutely the most important one. Start with the communication plan. Okay, but now let's get a little bit deeper in the weeds. So how do you do this? Well, first, you need to take stock of where things are right now. Define your current state. Really write it out, diagram it if you need to, but what are things right now? How do they function right now? Okay, then you set that aside and you look into the future. What do you see? How do you want things to look? How do you want people to interact with each other? What does that future state look like? The more detail of a description you can give for this, the easier your communication plan is going to be. Then you need to break it down. Well, what do people need to know, both from an understanding standpoint and from a skills standpoint, to make the future state real? Now, I remember thinking as a sophomore English teacher that my future state was that all of my students would be able to write a 5-paragraph essay by the end of the school year. I failed to consider that so many of my students had educational gaps or learning differences, or they were dealing with trauma at home. And so that was a pretty lofty goal for me to set in the first place, but I did not do any resistance management. I didn't do enough teaching and coaching. I assumed that all of my students were at the same level, and I really failed them that year. That was, I'm a little embarrassed about it, but I really did. I got better. I got to be a better teacher, but that first year was pretty rough. Okay, so what do they need to know? How we're going to train them on it? And then remember, communication is critical. So I'm going to review those 5 questions again. What's changing? Why is it changing now? What's the risk of not changing? And what's in it for me? Or how do I need to do my job differently? Back to the training, remember it takes time and practice to learn new skills. So don't do the one and done training. Give people time and opportunity to practice, and then plan for the roadblocks. Okay, so you can use ADKAR to diagnose resistance, because remember, A stands for awareness, D is desire, K is knowledge, A is ability, and R is reinforcement. So we can ask somebody, hey, we've started using this new software. How come you haven't used it? And you might hear, I didn't even know we were going to use a new software, even though you sent out 80 billion email and had multiple meetings about this. There's going to be somebody who says, I wasn't even aware. Well, that tells you you need to go back and do some more communication around it. Okay, maybe somebody is going to say something like, yeah, but you know what? This is education. It's going to change in 5 years anyway. So, you know, I'm just not going to, I don't have the desire to learn this. I'm not going to go for it. Okay, well, this tells us we need to do some more communication about what are the risks of not changing and what's the benefit for the person to change. How is this going to make their life better or easier? Or how are we going to accomplish our student success goals with more, I am having a brain cramp. I can't think of the right word, but how are we going to better achieve our student success goals? Okay, knowledge. Maybe somebody says, well, I went to that training and it's just overwhelming. I just don't even know how to use the software still. Like I want to, but I don't have the time to learn it. Okay, that tells us that we need to really invest in that training plan and give some of our teachers or whoever it is that we're helping change more opportunities to practice. We need to coach them. We need to help them. And then that goes right along with the A, if they don't have the ability. If they say, well, I think that I know how to do these things, but when I get into it, I get stuck. It's the same thing. They need more training or more support, something to help them move forward. And then finally, reinforcement. Sometimes I've heard of situations where a new project is launched or a new software or system or something like that. And I go back and help the company reevaluate. Okay, well, where are you? We went through the big change process 6 months ago, but it looks like you had a lot of adoption of this new way of doing things at the beginning, but now as time goes on, it's kind of trickled off again. What's going on? And what happens is that institutions forget to keep the communication going and reinforcing the change. So make sure the change has a lasting benefit, that we need to keep showing them this is still really important. Look at how much this is helping us. We've seen a decrease in this problem area, so on and so forth. But you can use ADKAR to diagnose that resistance and then target your treatment specifically for that reason of resistance. Okay, finally, celebrate and reinforce positive changes. This is really, really important. You want to make sure that even the smallest successes, you're celebrating and you're reinforcing those changes. So I have just word vomited all over you. I've given you a quick, I don't know how long I've been talking now. It hasn't been too long. Are we at like 20 minutes?
Closer to
like 30 minutes. Okay, then I've accomplished what I wanted to do. I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing my screen. And if anybody has any questions, it doesn't look like we have too many people in here. So you are welcome to turn on your microphone if you want. And
yeah, it looks like we've got a question here.
Okay.
If someone wants to learn about change management more in depth or even certified, where do you recommend they go?
So I would recommend ProSci. So if you just go to ProSci.com, they do have certification classes that you can take. And I will tell you that as an adult learner, their workshop was one of my most favorite adult learning experiences I've ever had. ProSci knows how to treat their people right. When you take a class from them, you are with an experienced change management practitioner, someone who's been doing it for 15, 20 years, and they bring real world examples to the class. So that's definitely where I would recommend starting. But there are so many theories out there, and ProSci, this is the one I'm the most familiar with because this is where I got certified. So that's why I'm going to recommend it. But there's a bunch others out there as well. So find one that fits, that fits your style. Maybe look a little bit at the methodologies and see, but there's lots of them out there.
Okay, we've got another question here. What was the biggest benefit of adopting this approach to you personally?
Oh goodness, what was the biggest benefit to me personally? I would say my ability to accomplish or have project success. So I found I was doing a lot of change management before I became certified, and just kind of piecemealing together all these different theories and methodologies that I'd studied. And I was like, oh, that looks good, I'm going to take that. And oh, that looks good, I'm going to take that. You know, we were okay, successful. But once I started really following the methodology and, you know, using the processes that ProSci has researched, I found that my projects were being completed ahead of time, under budget, and we had better adoption. So we got to the future state quicker, and we stayed there longer. So I think that would be the biggest benefit. It made my life easier.
Okay, we've got another question here. What is the most difficult aspect of adopting this approach?
The most difficult process is probably fighting the fear that you have to do it perfectly the first time. I think that it's okay to start with piecemeal if that's what you want. I think that just accepting that you're not going to be perfect the first time you do it, that you will still you're still going to make mistakes. There's always people who will resist. I think that, again, if I ask some of you to think about that person in your brain who is resistant to change no matter what, I mean, we all know them. There's that person that you know who you give them a pay raise and they complain that they're in a higher tax bracket. So you know, just know that there's still going to be resistance. I feel like I'm rambling. I don't know if I answered that question.
Doesn't look like we have any other questions.
Okay.
For the moment. So if we could,
I will mute, yes.
Doesn't look like we have any other questions here. So we'd like to thank all of you for coming, but most of all, we'd like to thank Mindy for giving us this wonderful presentation. With this, we wanted to remind all of you that this event has been recorded, and if you would like to revisit it or share it with someone you know, these are such profound principles that can be really game-changing for all of us. We will have that available at elumatherapy.com in our webinar section. So we invite you to do so. We will also have this on the eLuma YouTube web page. So please feel free to visit. And we thank all of you for coming today. And happy Friday, everyone. Thank you, Mindy.
Thank you. Bye, everybody.